Episode 8 of the MGM Plus original horror show From has released, and damn, was I on the money with some of my theories. I'm actually really excited to talk about this episode, and I can confidently say that it's a major improvement from the previous episode, at least when it comes to character interactions and acting. But speaking of the last episode, a very keen-eyed commenter on my last video pointed out a small but significant detail that I missed, and I'm sure many of you missed as well. If you recall back to episode 6, I think it was, Victor and his dad were in the tunnels looking for Jasper, and in the place that he found him, there was a teapot on the table. The same teapot Tilly was using to make some tea for Fatima, which means Tilly was in the tunnels with all the monsters. So I expressed to that commenter of how Tilly could still in fact be evil. I guarantee you, before the season's even over, she's just gonna, crawl out of her grave, just just all corpse and decayed, and end up being the big final bat of the show. Okay, obviously that might be a bit far-fetched, but even though Tilly is dead, I promise this isn't the last we've seen of her. But let's hit the ground running with the plotline I know you're all most curious about. What the hell is going to happen to Fatima now that she's murdered someone? Well, the very start of the episode is Boyd taking her out to this shack in the middle of the woods to try and protect her, similar to what he did for Sarah. You think he would have learned how that works out by now? Though I do love Boyd as a character for trying to protect everyone, Fatima murdered. But Fatima murdered someone, and as Donna points out later in the episode, when Boyd is under the impression that he's going to have the opportunity to explain himself as to why he did this, he thinks the townspeople are just going to believe him and understand, but Donna points out that they don't believe in him like they used to. Especially after the whole Sarah incident in Season 1 and Season 2. It's like, I would lose my faith in Boyd too if I were one of the townsfolk after a whole scheme like that. But let us diverge our focus for a moment to Elgen's plotline, because it is going to converge with Fatima's in pretty much the exact sense that I predicted it would in the last video. Not exact to the T, but basically what I said would happen, happened. Elgen continues receiving photos from, I think it's safe to say, the drowned woman, and the first photo he receives is of an IV drip filled with blood. Doesn't say whose blood or where it came from, but Elgen's just like, I'll just use my own blood, because why not? But no, his instructions are pretty obvious through the photos, and it's a decent example of show don't tell. Because they could have just had the drowned woman tell him all this, but instead they used this little thing with the photo, which I think is pretty cool. He goes to get some sort of blood extraction device from the clinic, and he runs into Randall, and I actually really like the little scene that unfolds here. It's a very human scene, because Elgen sort of awkwardly apologizes for vomiting on Randall's shirt when they first arrived in town, and that just little display of awkwardness and apologizing for something that happened a while ago and doesn't really matter anymore, it shows that everybody is still clinging onto their humanity amidst all the chaos. Randall warns Elgen to not let Christy and Mariel catch him rummaging through their stuff because they'll have a bit of a freak out, which is true, but Elgen's just like, nah, I just need a plastic tube, I'm in, I'm out, got the blood, beep bop boop, next photo. You actually have to look really close at this next photo because it's only on screen for less than a second, and I am very proud of myself because I saw what it was on my first viewing. It's a photo of the wooden shack that Fatima's currently staying at out in the woods. Elgen goes out to Fatima and takes her to the cellar, whilst at the same time, Donna, Boyd, and Ellis are all talking about what to do about Fatima. Just as I said in the last episode, I said something along the lines of, if the theory that Fatima is the drowned woman, which we've had a few snippets that might be leaning into this idea, if that is the case, it wouldn't surprise me that if in the next episode, or just whenever Donna and Boyd are sort of deciding what to do about this murder, it wouldn't surprise me if Elgen walked in and was like, hey, I have a potential solution, and then he brings Fatima to the cellar. I'm not 100% confident this is definitely what's going to happen, but if the Fatima being the drowned woman theory is accurate, then I'd say it's a likely possibility that that could happen. Yeah, just replay the freaking clip, Void. Why bother explaining it? And an important detail to note, before Elgen even shows up, the drowned woman makes a brief appearance to Fatima out in that wooden shack. I don't know if this means that they're the same person, but it definitely confirms that they're connected in some meaningful, deeper sense. Fatima understandably gets a little freaked out when they're in the cellar, as I think anyone would, so she tries to hightail it out of there. Again, I think anyone would do that in that situation. Someone just brought me to this random cellar and it's creepy as hell. I want out. And what Elgen says here slightly leans into one of my theories.
There is no baby.
Yes, there is. It's just not yours.
And the episode ends with Fatima in pain, kind of grasping at her stomach a little bit, just just, really in pain, and Elgen dragging her forcefully into that hidden room behind the cabinet. Man, that is how you do a closer cliffhanger for an episode. I gotta be honest, this plotline is probably one of the most intriguing to me, not just because my theories and ideas and speculations have been really spot on, but because I'm just anxious to see what happens next. Who is this baby that Fatima is carrying? Is it the drowned woman at a young age? Which, that would indicate time travel, but we're gonna get to that in a little bit. But next up, we should really talk about Julie. I haven't really mentioned her much throughout this season because, well, she hasn't really been doing much other than getting high and being scared and ignoring her demons. But this episode's a little different. And by a little, I mean a lot. We see Julie return to the stone structure where Boyd destroyed the music box back in season 2. And she takes Ethan with her because she admits that she's really terrified, but she knows she's supposed to do something here. And Ethan finally stops being so depressed and a Debbie Downer. He finally is giving up that act. And he tells Julie that she is at a threshold and that she needs to be brave and that she can be brave. That's also the title of this episode, Thresholds. I think that's actually a very fitting title because everything, like all the plot lines throughout this season and even throughout some parts of the show, have reached a threshold now. Are we going to cross the boundary and, get some answers? Or are some characters going to fall short or die or whatever? This episode feels like a threshold. But as Julie enters the structure, the scene changes around her to exactly how it was in season 2 when Boyd was trapped at the bottom of the well. And once again, we see that old Marine, that old dying, decrepit ass, I think Martin was his name. I'm pretty sure Martin was his name. We see he's still chained up there. Well, that's odd. We saw Boyd set him free, and then Boyd got those worms and used it to kill one of the creatures. So, what's going on here? Why is he still chained up? But this scene, and the way it plays out, changes everything. When Boyd was at the bottom of that well, someone threw a rope down to him so he could climb out. It wasn't Martin. He was all chained up. It was Julie. It was Julie who threw the rope down to Boyd. So, somehow, in this vision, or whatever this is, Julie traveled to the past. Or at least her mind or spirit did, in some sense. In reality, Julie's still on the ground in the middle of the structure. Her body is spazzing. I think she's screaming, and her eyes are all white. Kind of like how she was when her, Randall, and Marielle were all having those freak-out visions when nobody could sleep. But this adds so many questions. Is every vision we've seen something in the past? When Tabitha sees the children all the time, are they from the past? And is she interacting with the past? What about Jade? When he sees things, is he seeing visions of the past? I think he is, which we're going to get to in a later point. I don't know, man, but now you gotta think to yourself, is this show actually a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff kind of show?
Wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey.
But this show is notorious for posing a lot of questions without a lot of answers. So let's get some goddamn answers. And this time, our answers are gonna come from Victor. As we all know, Victor makes drawings and pictures to remember things, or at least preserve the memories so he doesn't have to. But Victor didn't preserve this memory of Jasper talking because he was so afraid. He didn't want to remember this. But through some perseverance and a little bit of process of elimination, Victor does remember. And we learn that Christopher wasn't talking to Jasper, because that would be ridiculous. Jasper's a doll. Christopher was talking to the boy in white, one of the very few entities we know of that aren't inherently malicious or evil. We learn through Victor's memories that the ghost children Tabitha keeps seeing were, quote, born in the dark and murdered in the dark. Then someone they loved told them a story, and that story gave them hope. So they laid on the stones and poured that hope into the roots that make up the symbol. Does this sound familiar to you? Because it is exactly what Jade saw at the end of season 2 when he went into the tunnels. Jade saw the creation of the faraway trees. So not only was I on the money about what the symbol was being the source of the faraway trees, but I was also on the money about Elgen taking Fatima to the cellar. Man, I am on fire with this one. Okay, with all the big revelations and major plot points taken care of, let's go over some other small character moments and just little things of significance that I want to talk about. One of my favorite moments in this episode is at the bar, featuring of course my main man Jade, as well as Henry and a little bit later Jim. Jade has absolutely no idea who Henry is. He just kind of comes in and Henry's just sort of there. And unlike what season 1 Jade would do, Jade doesn't tell him to fuck off or get lost or get out of my workspace or whatever. Jade's like, no, yeah, have a sit, have a drink if you want, yeah, whatever. And he opens up a little bit. Not only does this show vulnerability and the willingness to be a little bit more open to others start to become more prominent in Jade, but throughout this entire scene and this entire episode, Jade doesn't have a single drink. He took Dead Tom's advice to heart and decided to sober up a little bit. Really loving Jade's character growth throughout this show. Like I said, he's one of my favorite characters, and his growth for the past season and a half has been fantastic. I've absolutely loved it. Then old Jimmy Boy bursts in and tries to give Jade the stay away from my wife threat, and not to fill Tabitha's head with ideas, which is really rich coming from Jim, since that is exactly what Donna told Jim when Randall first arrived, was to not fill his head with ideas. A little bit hypocritical there, Jim. And then Jim gets fucking roasted, just utterly flamed from both Jade and Henry. I'll just play the scenes because no amount of explaining can just live up to just how priceless these scenes are.
Tabitha's a grown-up. You got a problem with what she's doing? Talk to her.
Sorry, we're not done here.
No, we fucking are, Jim.
Maybe sometimes when you're with your wife, you should shut the fuck up and listen.
Excuse me?
Good advice and pep talks, huh? But no, seriously, if Jim wants to keep his family and keep his bonds with them good, then he should stop trying to control what they're exposed to and what they choose to be exposed to. And thankfully, Boyd feels like Boyd in this episode. He tries to concoct a plan that protects both Fatima and Ellis, whilst at the same time giving the people the truth. And it's not gonna work this time. He's pulled this once with Sarah, and she was a murderer. And guess what? Fatima's now a murderer too. Is Fatima more beloved than than Sarah? Yeah, I'd say so. But she's still a fucking murderer, and the people aren't gonna feel good about that. And as much as I hate to agree with Donna, the people really don't believe in Boyd like they used to. That faith in him has kind of dwindled this season, and his reputation's kind of in the shitter. There's this scene where Kenny, Boyd, and Acosta are standing at the scene of the crime, and Acosta asks Boyd if she and him are good, which she sure as hell wouldn't have done last episode. Boyd doesn't say yes or no. He conveys that he wants to see how everything regarding this situation plays out, and save all that personal quarrel and stuff for later, which is very in line with his character. He has his priorities in order. I mean, obviously he's lying because he knows who did it, but either way, he still has his priorities in order. Unlike putting himself up on a pedestal and acting like an arrogant asshole. Alright, I don't want to turn criticizing episode 7 into a recurring meme, so let me round things out here before I lose my freaking mind. But this episode's another winner for me. I mean, we get some genuine plot movement. I think the title's very fitting for the episode, and just overall, just another good episode. Zero complaints from me. Honestly, if I were to say what my favorite scene in this episode was, it was probably when Henry told Jim to shut the fuck up and listen to his wife for once.
Shut the fuck up.
Not only just for pure comedic value, just the way Jim said, "excuse me," like he was so offended, but it's also a very relatable moment, because when characters get genuine reality checks that just smack them right in the chest, it's an extremely relatable thing, because all of us have gotten our own reality checks one way or another. But what were your thoughts on this episode? What was your favorite scene? What were some of the details I might have missed? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and I would love to read over some of your thoughts. It's just one of my favorite things, because just like in the previous video, someone commented on a detail I totally missed that not confirms, but subtly confirms that Tilly might still be evil, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've been enjoying my coverage of From's third season, then consider dropping a like and sub. Remember, we're shooting for 10K by the end of the year, and if we hit 10K by the end of the year, I will be getting my first tattoo. So, time runs thinner every single week, so drop that sub button if you want to see me get some ink on my skin. And if you want to show me a little bit of extra support, then consider becoming a channel member. Not only do you directly support me, but you get a bunch of cool rewards like early video access, a cool badge next to your name, an exclusive Discord role, and a whole bunch of other stuff you can read about. So, consider becoming a channel member if you want to support me. But that's going to do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah. Have a good day, everyone.